Hello, everybody. It is that time. SEC Championship Week. Texas enters the SEC and immediately, first year, not even a year into it, is in the conference championship game. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We are here every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I really appreciate you guys doing that. Also, before it's too late, use that Amazon link in the description. We'll always have it, but it is Cyber Monday. Go out there and check out the deals that they have. They have some pretty good deals. I've been online myself looking at them. And then also check out the Ole Miss Wednesday show at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Mark and the girls over there. They do a fantastic job. They're going to do a lot of interviews with coaches, recruits, and stuff of that nature because it is that time of year. And Leanne lives down in Texas. So there's a lot of good recruits down in Texas. We know that. Also, call into Mark Show Thursday, Friday, and Saturday post game, and then Sunday morning as well before the NFL slate kicks off. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And let's jump right into it. For you guys that didn't catch our after-game, post-game show, Texas beats Texas A&M 17-7. Really dominant performance. Texas on defense does not give up any points. Gerald, let's jump into it and just recap it for those people that maybe didn't watch the whole game or just stuff we missed on. What was some of the good you saw in this game from Texas?
Yeah, I mean the biggest good is Texas's ability to control the line of scrimmage and play honestly on A&M's side of the line of scrimmage. The tackles for loss, keeping them from creating any sort of momentum. They're a team that wants to run the ball to create opportunities. They're wanting to set up Marcel Reed on zone reads. They're wanting to do all those things. And the Texas defensive front seven was not having any of it, right? It was one of their worst performances of the year. I think it's the first time all year they didn't crack 100 yards rushing. Like, not a great outing. Texas just flat dominated them at the point of attack, kept their running game going. And it was a Pete Kwiatkowski special. He saw that Marcel Reed wants to run those zone reads. They want to run that offensive scheme through him. And so, like, nope, we're going to make you pass the ball and try to beat us. And ultimately, A&M couldn't do that. So Texas's ability to limit and hamper what a team wants to do on offense continues to amaze me. Pete Kwiatkowski continues to be just an absolute baller of a defensive coordinator. I think a lot of folks said some mean things about him early in his tenure at Texas, but he has completely flipped that narrative. That, to me, is the biggest good from the game, is that the Texas defense continues to acquit itself really, really well. And I think the other thing that we have to say is the Texas running game and the offensive line are finding their stride at the right time. It was touch and go for a couple of weeks in the middle of the season, but over the last probably 4 games, Texas has really found its stride. Quintravian Wisner has found his stride, and the offense is better for it.
Yeah, 100%. We needed someone to step up in that room. We kind of had been juggling back and forth of the hot hand. Well, we found the hot hand. Quintravian Wisner is definitely the hot hand at this point. You got to keep feeding him. And he's also a guy, honestly, that's not putting the ball on the ground. That was the biggest issue with Jaden Blue, is putting the ball on the ground. Trey Wisner doesn't seem to do that as much. Jarrett Gibson did get 1 carry, and that was only because Trey Wisner got nicked up. And then Jaden Blue also got nicked up. So they're like, okay, here you go, 1 carry. We'll see if we see him on short yardage situations. They may have just used Arch Manning in that sort of role from now on, where if you need short yards, you go with Arch Manning. We'll see about that. It's going to be very interesting how they utilize that going forward. And there's a couple clips. Bobby Burton will put one out of DJ Campbell just blowing. I think it was Shamar Stewart off the ball like 2 to 3 yards. And that, my concern was early in the year was the right side of the offensive line. You see Cam Williams with the procedural penalties. He would get it. Basically, you could guarantee a holding call every game for him. DJ Campbell would also get beat pretty easily on some certain concepts. And so far, the last month, whatever they did during that second bye week before Florida really has worked, because that right side of the offensive line is playing much better. Early on, they played pretty well, but the Georgia game and a couple games there, it kind of got rocky. So whatever they did to fix that has worked beautifully. They're starting to play like the best offensive line in the country, which we all thought going into the season it was going to be them and LSU in their own separate tier, and they're starting to be in their own separate tier now. So it's really nice to see that, especially at this time during the year. The thing that I really like to see is Quinn Ewers' mobility in the pocket. That was something I don't know what the hell happened in that Georgia game. I will never know. I just don't understand what happened. He just refused to step up in the pocket. He refused to move even side to side in the pocket. As soon as he moved any way. He was just abandoning the pocket, just running for his life out of it, even though sometimes there weren't even rushes there. And it all confused us. Like, is it still the injury? What is it? In my perception now, I think it's a confidence thing. And I think we've seen Quinn deal with that on and off the field. I don't think he's the most confident human being, just straight up, just watching him in press conferences and anything, but he's definitely learned to become that a little bit more. And I think that also translates onto the field. And I think when he finds success early in games and you can get him in the rhythm, he becomes more confident. He's definitely a rhythm passer. And it's kind of weird. If the same with being a rhythm passer, he's rhythm with everything. Like if it's going well, he's good at moving up in the pocket, good at delivering on the run. I think the perfect example of that was the Gunnar Helm play on third down, where he steps up and he makes the defender decide, are you going to come to me or are you going to go to him? So he does a little like soft pump fake and then just lobs it over the top of him. And that was a beautiful play from Quinn Ewers. And it's something that we saw that in the Michigan game a lot. Like if I had to put the best tape of pocket mobility for Quinn Ewers, that was that whole game. I would have literally said, here, NFL scout, watch this. This is the best Quinn Ewers has looked at doing this. And then from there, it's just been completely downhill. And then you see it start to come back up again the last couple of weeks. And that is very important because, listen, did this offensive line get beat versus Georgia? Yes. But did they get beat as bad as the stats would say? 7 sacks? Absolutely not. I think if you were actually watching the film, you could credit maybe 2 to 3 to the offensive line. The rest were on Quinn Ewers abandoning clean pockets and not stepping up in the pocket. And the best example of that was he did not step up when Jalen Walker got beat so bad. He was on the ground and then tripped Quinn Ewers. If he steps up 1 foot, there's no one. He has a clean pocket. And we saw that in this game. He did that very well. There was only 1 sack, and that was completely on Jaden Blue. He blew that block. I don't know what he was doing there. You talked about that in the postgame, Gerald. I don't know what it was going on there. And we still don't really have that guy. Cedric Baxter is definitely the best running back blocker on the team for sure. And that's part of the reason as a freshman, he was getting on the field so much. That guy's a very physical just player in general, whether it's running or pass blocking. So the Quinn mobility is definitely a really good thing to see. Another thing that I liked in this game were it was everyone on the defense eating on the defense line. It wasn't just a certain player. Vernon Broughton had a drive. Barron Sorrell had a play or two. Ethan Burke had a play or two, and Ethan Burke's kind of gone MIA for a little bit, but then he stops it on that 4th down play. Beautiful play by him. Bill Norton again gets credit for that because he submarined that play. I mean, he was laying in the backfield 2 yards. So it's just beautiful to see multiple guys from that defensive line making plays, and especially Vernon Broughton. Vernon Broughton had gone kind of quiet, and then he had a hell of a game versus Texas A&M. So overall, just a really good game I think for the team as a whole. There's still some aspects I would like to see get better, but a lot got better in this A&M game, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah. And I think ultimately when it comes down to it, the question going into the game, I think, was what can Texas do against a potent ground attack like A&M's going to bring? They had played athletic quarterbacks before, but none, I think, were on the level of what Marcel Reed brings to the table. They neutralized that. They really played and controlled the pace of the game. They made A&M play the game that they wanted to play. And that ultimately is what a championship level defense does, is they say, you're going to play in our yard. We're not going to play in your yard. And we're going to keep, and there was a lot of talk after the game about how not intense the crowd was. And part of that was because the defense shut their offense up. The best way to get a crowd going is to have a big offensive play. And it just didn't happen, right? The only time the crowd really was a factor was after that pick 6. And so the defense kept the offense kind of mundane and kept the offense and kept the crowd out of it. So that was huge for me. And I want to backtrack to what you're talking about with Quinn Ewers. There's this weird, like, Quinn Ewers is his own worst critic, but also like the things that he does really well are the things that also frustrate me about Quinn Ewers. Like, he is supremely confident in his arm and in his passing ability in a lot of ways, but also you look at that kind of lob pass that should have been intercepted. That's a play that, he's been making that play since South Lake Carroll, but he's not the most talented guy on the field, right? And you see the first time he really plays players that are on the level of his talent. Michael Taft intercepts him multiple times in the state championship game, right? So like there is that to be said about Quinn Ewers as well. As I think some of the plays that he makes that are frustrating, some of the putting the ball in peril, and even the way he was carrying the ball on that scramble, I think some of it can be boiled down to like he trusts himself almost a little too much in some spots, and then other spots he doesn't trust himself enough. And it's this weird back and forth of like, are we going to get supremely confident, good Quinn Ewers? Are we going to get supremely confident, overthrows wide receivers all day Quinn Ewers? Like, are we going to get Quinn Ewers that doesn't trust himself, plays hesitant, trips over his own feet? Like, there are these three different Quinn Ewers that we get, and I'm curious to see. Big games are generally the trust myself and rocket the ball off and win games for Texas type of games for Quinn Ewers. So I'm curious to see what and who shows up in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and that goes for both quarterbacks. I said in the post game, I think there's a lot of similarities between Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, and they both played god awful games the last time these two teams played. Literally only the difference was Carson Beck turned the ball over on his side of the field deep in the red zone, whereas Quinn Ewers was turning it on our side of the field in our own red zone, and that's why Georgia won the football game. That's literally the only difference between the two. They both played terrible. Carson Beck had 3 interceptions. His yards per attempt was 4.3. That is abysmal, not good at all. Like, you want a quarterback to be around 7.5 to 8. Elite guys like Jaden Daniels averaged 10.2 or something like that last year. So that's like elite of the elite. 4.3 is god awful. That's like high school quarterback getting dropped in playing college level. It's really bad. So it's going to be interesting. I think, honestly, whatever guy doesn't turn the ball over in this game, that's probably the team that's going to win the football game. Whatever quarterback plays the cleanest. I don't even need him to be great, but who plays the cleanest football game.
I've been saying that about Quinn Ewers since, I think, the game on Saturday, right? Like, we don't need Quinn Ewers to be the world beater. We just need him to not beat himself and beat Texas, right? That was the big difference in the Georgia game the last time. The 3 turnovers, right? And we can also talk about how Texas not scoring off of Georgia's turnovers, giving the ball right back to them. 15-point game. You turn any of those into points, it's a whole different ball game. So, like, we don't need Quinn Ewers to win the game by himself. He's got plenty of help. Right, he's got plenty of help defensively. He's got some help on the offense as well. Like, just don't lose the game for Texas, and I think things will go well.
100%. Now let's talk about some of the bad that went down, because there were a couple things. I'll hit on this one first. Special teams. It just has to be good. It doesn't have to be great. I don't need guys returning touchdowns. I just need guys catching punts. I need guys getting the punts off and the blocking to be good. And I need Bert Auburn to be money under 40 yards. If you can give me those things, I think that is good enough to win a national championship with this team. You cannot, like, versus Georgia, if you get a blocked punt versus that team, they're going to capitalize. They're going to score points off of that. If you miss 45-yard field goals and set them up on short fields, they'll score points off that. And even if you want to talk past Georgia in this game, if you get into the college football playoff, those type of things cost you. You see that all the time. Just go watch Sundays in the NFL, because all those games are decided by little things like that. When you start to get into the elite tier of college football, where there's even more parity, it's the exact same thing. So we have to just clean things up in that area. And then still, Jaden Blue didn't get very many carries this game. If he gets a lot of carries, don't fumble the football. That's all I care about. Do not fumble the football. I actually like the way Sark kind of utilized him in this game. Is basically he's more of a receiver than anything, and I think that is his best skill set. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But those are the two main things going into this game and moving forward into the rest of the season, and what hopefully is a very long season, that we have to get better if we want to reach the peak of college football.
My favorite special teams games are ones when you don't notice the special teams players, right? I don't want to have a conversation about special teams. And that's no dig at the punters and kickers and specialists and all that. You have a vital role, but your best skill as a punter or as a kicker or as a holder or as a snapper is for me not to notice you on a Saturday, right? I don't want to have a conversation about a punter not being in the right spot. I don't want to have a conversation about the holder not getting the ball down correctly. The best special teams games are ones that I don't have to have a conversation about. We're just like, yep, those are great. Didn't have anything to talk about. It's completely unremarkable. And that to me is going to be a differentiator. And, you know, when you're playing a team with the talent of Georgia, and we're spinning it ahead a little bit here, like, those little mistakes compound, right? And we've seen it. Those little mistakes in footwork, those little mistakes in execution, they compound. And Georgia is very clearly not last year's Georgia or not 2 years ago's Georgia, but they are still the highest blue chip ratio in the country. They are still the team with all of the NFL guys on it. It's like on any given day they can pop off. And so it's on Texas to avoid the things that they did on Saturday, where putting the ball in conflict, don't throw it into tight windows. There were multiple times that Quinn Ewers should have had a ball intercepted and it just didn't happen, right? Bryce Anderson whiffed on one and Gunnar Helm kind of sunned him on a little bit, saw some bounce off hands as well. Like that to me is what I want to see from Quinn Ewers moving forward and from the offense moving forward. Is like, I don't need the quarterback to be the winner. I don't. At this point, we know what Texas is and what Texas isn't. And so looking at that game, the inability to make smart decisions in tight windows is something that I'm curious about. Make the right reads, get comfortable. You'll never go broke making a profit. So the check down is always your best friend, right? So like that to me is what I want to see. And it was okay on Saturday, but there were some spots that Texas threw, and Quinn Ewers threw some interceptable balls that did not get picked off and kept things from getting squirrelier earlier.
Yeah, 100%. He tends to throw some balls definitely that should be intercepted. I mean, the Will Wee one was just so bad. It was so late across the middle and just lofted. There was nothing behind it. That was kind of like, you know what? Let's hope this gets caught. We'll see what happens type of throw. But yeah, I agree. It just has to be better going forward if we want to reach that pinnacle, because you have to be good in the little details and not make key mistakes too. So we'll see what happens, but that does it for the Texas A&M recap. Again, 17-7 for you guys that didn't watch the whole game or didn't see the final score. I'm sure most people that are going to watch this or were watching did, but there's that. Now, again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Also, use the Amazon link in the description for all of your Christmas shopping. Does not change anything. All it does is put a little bit of change in Mark's pocket. Also, check out Mark's call-in shows Thursday, Friday, and Saturday post-game. You're going to see a lot of post-game Saturday because of Conference Championship weekend, so check that out over there. And then also Sunday recap. And go over and check the Ole Miss show at 2 p.m. Eastern time and subscribe over there as well. It really, really helps out the channel. I really appreciate you guys doing that as well. Now, let's talk about recruiting, because signing day is in 2 days, basically a day and a half now. Not even that, just a day basically. And Texas loses a recruit, today or yesterday, and Joseph Mbachu, 4-star defensive lineman from Florida. It's going to be very interesting to see how they replace him. If they do replace him, I'm sure they will in the transfer portal at least, and how this plays out, because I think this is going to be the craziest signing day just with all the NIL money. And I think there's a lot of desperate coaches that Texas is going against as well. If you think about it, like Billy Napier is desperate. His job depends on this recruiting class and how next season goes. Brian Kelly is desperate. His job depends on this recruiting class and how it goes. He's already lost his crown jewel in Bryce Underwood. Brent Venables is desperate. Can he keep Michael Fasusi in the boat for this next year and put an offensive line in front of whoever the quarterback's going to be? And they just hired Benjamin Arbuckle. All the OU insiders have said that's a done deal, basically. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of guys that Texas is going against that are desperate. And guess what? They're going to overpay. So all I'm saying is buckle up, Texas fans. Don't worry. It will take care of itself. Stark's done a great job with this recruiting class. But what do you think is going to come down this next couple weeks, Gerald?
I think it's funny that this is my third show, my second Monday show, and I've already had to talk about a player's commitment and decommitment in both those shows. It's hilarious. It's just funny. But I think ultimately, this is recruiting among the big boys, right? This is what it is. This is not Mac Brown in 2005 having a class cinched up before the start of the season. That's not the case anymore. And so I think we just have to get on board with this roller coaster. Texas is not really going to, or rarely, I will say, get outbid for a player they truly want, right? That's not what's going to happen. Ultimately for Texas, it's going to be a matter of finding the right fit, finding the right player, and then compensating them. Because the guys that Texas is going after are going to get paid wherever they go. And everybody's going to want to pay them, right? It just is what it is. It's the reality of the situation. So when push comes to shove, this is what recruiting amongst the big boys is nowadays. You have to be prepared for the roller coaster. You can't be Chicken Little on the Tuesday before signing day. You just can't do it. It's not going to work out. So I don't know what's going to – it looks like from everything I'm reading, Fasusi's probably not going to end up in that OU class, which I don't hate. We don't really have much clarity on where he's going to end up. That's probably the last him and there are a couple of skill players that maybe Texas is going to poke at and prod at. We'll see how it works out. But, ultimately, Texas is in a good spot. They've got a good class. They've addressed most, if not all, the needs already. Like the way that Sark has created his recruiting class, it's almost like the next iteration of how Mac Brown used to recruit, where it seems like they take care of the bare necessities early. They get it cinched up, before the season, coming out of that June, July visit window. And then they spend the entire season big game hunting. And so that, to me, it's the right strategy. Texas, and with that, you're going to miss on some players around signing day, and it's going to feel a little lackluster at times because most of the class, again, the core parts of the class are going to be locked up September, August, September, October. So November, December come around, you may have one or two big ones pop. You may not have one or two big ones pop, but that's, again, it's a smart strategy from Sark, and it's part of recruiting at this high level. Texas is among the giants in the recruiting realm at this point, and that's just part of the game.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So on Michael Fasusi, everything that I've heard, read, seen, basically, I don't think it's going to be OU. Who knows at this point? Because literally last week, it seemed like he was going to be OU. But as of this moment, I think it's probably going to honestly be A&M. I think there's just a slight lean there, which it would suck. So we could lose him to OU, and then we probably could lose him to A&M. I think that's a slight lean. Like, guys, I would not put money on either side of that. I'm not confident in it. The only two guys I'm confident in at this point, from everything I've seen, everything I've read, is Kellen Wiley. I think it's come down to Maryland and Texas. Like, if Texas wants him, he will be going to Texas. Maryland is not outbidding Texas, if that's what it comes down to. And he also likes the whole package of Texas, like the school and also the football program. So that's a good thing. So it's down to those two. His teammate did commit to Maryland. We'll see if that has any sway. Usually, honestly, it really doesn't have that much sway if you look at it. And then Michael Terry, for the longest time, what I've heard is seen to be a silent commit to Texas. We'll see if that turns out to be true. His dad said today that it's good and done. Like, wherever he's going, he knows where he's going. It's just going to be a surprise to everyone else on signing day, or to most people on signing day. I think he ends up at Texas. Those are the two I would say, you know what? I'm willing to bet on those two at Texas. Everyone else, I have no idea. Like, today's being reported, there's going to be a big flip. Multiple sites have reported it. I've seen it. I've heard about it. I don't know who that is. Nope. Your guess is as good as mine. Do you want to say it could be DeCorian Moore? Sure, even though I don't think that's really a possibility right now. Could it be Dallas Wilson, who's also committed to Oregon? Possibly, which would be interesting. He's never visited Texas, but Texas has been begging him to come on campus and offered him. Yeah. Lamont Rogers decommitted from Missouri today, even though I kind of see that as an A&M lean as well. We'll have to see. Who knows? Could it be Ty Haywood? Could he just completely flip from Alabama to, it seems like, Michigan now to Texas? Possibly. We will see. Javion Hilson, I guess, went completely silent today on everyone recruiting him, on every school. So to me, that tells me he's in the lab just mulling over where he wants to go. And most likely, guys, it would not shock me. He wakes up tomorrow, he knows exactly where he goes. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about if you're going to just shut everyone out for a day. So it's going to be a very, very interesting signing day. A day now, basically. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah. I will come here with I'll make some videos about whoever decides to jump in the class. I'm really excited to see who that big one is. Maybe it's Justice Terry wouldn't be flipping, but every report out there seems like his family and him, or his family especially, want him to stay close. So that does not bode well for Texas, because every school in the running is either in Alabama or Georgia. Texas is definitely farther away from Georgia than those places. So we'll see what happens there. I honestly think, though, if Texas pays him the amount of money and offers, hey, you know what? If it's your family so far away, hey, maybe we can throw in some free plane tickets or whatever, private flights back home. Like that, he's that type of prospect where he could command that type of stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I would love to have him. I mean, he's definitely a plug and play guy, in my opinion. I think there's really only like 2 or 3 of those guys left in like all the country. So Texas is in play for 2 of them. I think Michael Fasusi's that same way, and I think Justice Terry's that same way. It's going to be interesting. Texas has a path to the number 1 class. It's a narrow one. You have to flip Fasusi, you have to sign Justice Terry, and you have to keep Justice Terry and keep Michael Terry. If you do that, I think they end up with the number 1 class, but it's going to be hard to do. I think they're going to get one of the 3 for sure. It's going to be hard to get all 3.
I mean, I think a top 3 class is still really good for this group. Like that's it. the worst this group is going to end up is like 3 to 5, and that's exactly where Texas stacking top 5 classes is how you build the dynasty. And so obviously you want the number 1 class and you want all those things, but like Texas is going to hit on who they need to hit on. There's probably going to be a miss or two in there, but again, this is recruiting with the big boys. You cannot live and die by every update and every social media post. And I know all of the rabid message board fans, I'm one of them. I'm on the message boards as well, right? I know we live and die on every tweet and we read all the subtext. I put out a dumb joke once and people thought I was trying to give hints at somebody committing. I was like, no, I'm just making jokes about Kyle Flip being awesome. Like, let's just deal with it, right? But ultimately, like, we'll find out in like 36 hours how it's going to end up.
Yeah, 100%. And a couple names that just came to my mind that could also be a part of that. If you want to speculate, the big guy flipping, I think Devin Sanchez is in that list, the big time 5-star at North Shore, committed to Ohio State. Dorian Brews also on that list, committed to Oregon. I'm forgetting another cornerback too. That's a big name that could also flip, but there's definitely that group as well. If it's anyone other than those 5 or 6 guys I named, I literally have no idea who else it could be. Like this person, if it's any of those, that if it's not one of those 5 or 6, then it's basically someone who has not been on Texas's radar this whole time. And they, you know what, they gave him a call up and they're like, you want to come here? We got some money for you, and we'd love to have you. But I can't think of anyone else.
I've got nothing.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Signing days has gotten even more exciting now. And the portal, which is so dumb. I still don't understand this, opens the 8th. So it opens the day the college football playoff is announced, which makes no sense. But, the college football has kind of been wrecked for a while in the dates and rules and everything they've written. So why not keep it that way, I guess. So that's very interesting.
I mean, hands are a little tied with spring semester enrollments and people taking visits and doing that. It is a lose-lose situation in a lot of ways, but ultimately, it's just another thing. That's what the money's for all these coaches, right? It's what the money's for.
Yeah, and the portal being open, like some of the names that have gone in, there's some really good players. Like Micah Hudson's a good player. Kevin Concepcion from North Carolina State. That would be someone like if Matthew Golden goes to the NFL, which I think he might. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. You're going to lose Bond. If you lose both of them, I wouldn't mind going after a Kevin Concepcion or Micah Hudson. If you don't lose Golden, though, I don't really see any point at that point because you would have all those freshmen plus the guys still on the bench, and you would have Matthew Golden. I wouldn't really see a point. If you lose Golden, I have no issue with going after, a older wide receiver at that position, but we'll have to see what happens.
I would be shocked. Like, this is not a shot at the kid, but like just the way that the Hudson recruitment went down.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if they kick the tires on him. They probably will. There's reports that he has interest in Texas, but that recruitment was so weird.
Yeah, he kind of trolled Texas there for a little bit, so it'd be interesting. It was kind of like the Evan Stewart one as well, and all the Texas fans like, go after Evan Stewart, going after Evan Stewart, and like Texas just did not seem interested in all at Evan Stewart, so that could turn out to be the case, even though I think Micah Hudson was actually rated higher than Evan Stewart coming out of high school, so it'll be interesting. But those are some of the early names. I know Texas won't be interested in this, but Kalen Salter going in from Liberty. He's a good quarterback, so someone will get a good player there as well.
Yep. There's going to be some moving pieces for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And it's weird because there's not going to be as many coaches fired this year. So that'll be very interesting. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. Check out the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process at all. All it does is put a little bit of change into Mark's pocket. Also, check out Mark's call-in show Thursday, Friday, and Saturday post-game at the Voice of College Football main channel, and also Sunday, just recapping all of Saturday. And check out the Ole Miss channel and show 2 p.m. Eastern time with Mark and those guys over there. So please do that as well. It really helps out what we're trying to build here, guys. I really appreciate it. And moving on to the SEC championship game, a rematch, a big-time game. We finally get another crack at the Dogs. 2.5-point favorites in this game in Atlanta. Texas versus Georgia. The over-under is set at 49. Gerald, I will let you have a crack at this one first. What are you expecting? What are your keys to the game? Stuff of that nature.
Yeah, I'm expecting another good one. I think, Georgia being the underdog is infuriating to me in this because there's one person that plays the respect card or the disrespect card, I guess, better than Kirby Smart, right? He is a pro at that. They're going to be up for the game. They're going to be up for it. But I think from my perspective, the things that plagued Texas in that first Georgia game, I don't anticipate it going the same way. Texas has been running the ball really well. They sucked at running the ball against Georgia the first time, right? The offensive line seems to have found its rhythm, seemed to found, even with Kelvin Banks' status being a little uncertain for that game, the offensive line is playing as good, if not better, than it has all year. And so the communication issues are starting to solve themselves. The running backs, Quintravian Weisner finding his footing. So I think like the game for me is once again going to be lost. Won and lost at the line of scrimmage. That's where it was lost, earlier this year in Austin. I think it's going to be won or lost there again. And Texas' ability to run the ball when they need to, when they want to. Quinn Ewers taking care of the ball. Those are the keys to the game. It's overly simple, but like football is a simple game. Don't turn the ball over, win at the point of attack, and I think Texas has a shot to win this one.
Yeah, 100%. Trevor Gooseby, we'll see if he is the left tackle. What's crazy about that, he was the highest rated offensive lineman according to Pro Football Focus for Texas. He was the 11th highest rated offensive lineman in all of college football. Ooh. So to come in and do that versus Nick Scourton, who was the main assignment, listen, I've always thought Nick Scourton was a bit overrated, but listen, NFL scouts love him, and he's going to be a first-round pick. So to do that in your first start, props to him. He was prepared, he was well rehearsed, and he did a fantastic job in that football game. And also credit to Kyle Flood. This offensive line was in shambles when he got here, and we have like 8 guys that I basically trust to play offensive line now. So that's really impressive to do in the short time he's been here. Listen, it's still going to be a big deal if Kelvin Banks can't play in this game because this is a different monster. You're going to get a lot of Mykel Williams. You're going to get a lot of Jalen Walker. And believe me, they are going to throw blitzes at Trevor Gooseby because they know he is not seasoned like Kelvin Banks. He has not seen the same things. So it's going to be very interesting how that goes. I think Kelvin Banks will end up playing. Sark kind of said he's doing decently well. He's doing probably just as good as Quinn Ewers was last week. So that tells me he's going to play. What's going to be interesting, and I think they're going to treat this a lot like an NFL game where they realize this guy really doesn't need a lot of practice or prep. I think he'll try to give it a go Thursday to see if someone can push on him and his ankle doesn't give out. If that's good to go, I think he'll play in this game. So watch out for that in this game. In this game, like I said, Quinn Ewers has to be able to step up, has to be able to make plays with his legs. He did it versus A&M. He went for a couple pretty decently long runs, or at least escaped the pocket and allowed his receivers to get open. And that's another thing too. When I went back and rewatched that Georgia game after the Georgia game, didn't watch this time because I don't want to put myself through that again. There wasn't much separation between the wide receivers of Texas and the Georgia DBs. We really didn't create that much separation, so I think Sark has to do a better job in this game of scheming his guys open a little bit more. Yeah. I'd like to see them take advantage of Georgia's aggressiveness early on, not with wide receiver screens because they know that. They were ready for that the last time. Yeah. I'd like to see him try some misdirection and also some running back screens. That's not something he does as much as I think he should do sometimes. And I'd also like to see play action early on to try to hit some deep balls to soften them up because they were playing on their tippy toes all last game. They were ready to come downhill and smack the whole night. We never made them think at all about, if this could be happening, this could be happening. They knew exactly what was coming, and they just destroyed everything in the first half. So I think Sark's going to learn from that. Obviously, he's way too good of a play caller, knows way too much about football to just run out that same game plan. So I think that's going to be interesting. And then, I agree. I think this has to be, at some point, a heavy dose of Trey Weisner in that offensive line to lean on him, get him tired. And I think they're going to be able to do that this time. Do I think it's going to be like Kentucky or Texas A&M where we're able to run for 156 yards with Trey Weisner and 180-something yards with Trey Weisner? No. But can Trey Weisner run for 90 to 100 yards in this game? Yeah. I think he can, and I think that's good enough in this game. And then when we do get those deep balls, like the one to Matthew Golden, can you hit one, Quinn? I just need one. Can you hit one and then also be very good at the intermediate game as well? We saw that beautiful pass to Ryan Wingo on the route that basically just running to the sideline. That's all that route was. Beat your guy to the sideline. Yep. Quinn delivered it out there to him. It was a beautiful pass. Those type of routes, I think you can get open, especially with, I think a guy that in this game is going to make a couple plays is Amari Niblack. he's been getting a little bit more run, and I think he's just the type of athlete in this game to be able to exploit Georgia's safeties and linebackers, even though they are very athletic in the passing game. So I think that's a name to look out for. It's going to be interesting how we use Arch Manning in this game. I think that's another thing to look out for. I don't know if he's just a red zone threat. I don't know if we're going to use him in between the 20s or outside the 20s at all. It's going to be very interesting how we use him.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be opportunities. I think Sark is probably going to pull some tricks out of his bag and pull some new things in and out. We have to talk about the Texas defense too, and what they did or were unable to do against Georgia the last time. That was, Trevor Etienne's big game of the year, or kind of his big coming out party. The Texas defense will likely not want to have that happen again, and frankly, they take a lot of pride in it. So I wouldn't be shocked if that is a focus this week. There's going to be a lot of chess going back and forth. I think Mike Bobo is going to have some new wrinkles. I think Pete Kwiatkowski is going to have a lot of wrinkles as well. I really think part of what went wrong for Texas is Georgia did a lot of stuff in that game that we hadn't seen before, that the offense hadn't seen before. A lot of the stemming, a lot of the looks, a lot of the alignments, a lot of the late blitzes. There's obviously going to still be some of that in the bag, but how much of that is really left for them to be able to pull out? So I don't know. I can't answer that question. The answer is probably still quite a bit, but I think there is going to be less confusion. Texas is going to be honestly prepared for stuff they're unprepared for as much as you can be, right? Look out. And it all comes down to communication, right? It all comes down to the quarterback trying to communicate as well as he can, the offensive line maintaining communication as well. I really hope that the NCAA does something about the trend of stemming right before the snap, and kind of lump some of it in with the disconcerting signals calls, because obviously you can't limit the defense from moving and changing, but also the clearly coordinated stem to try to get the offensive line to jump is a little sketch in my opinion, and Georgia has employed that quite a bit. So that's something else to be prepared for. But ultimately, Texas has and can win this game, right? They've won games like this in the past. They went into Alabama last year and smacked Alabama. They've won this type of game before, and they have the horses in the barn to do it. But will they show up? Will the minds be right? Will the bodies be right? And ultimately, will they be able to live up to the standard that they've set in other weeks?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it will be interesting if the NCAA ever does anything about that. A&M did that a whole bunch last week. We actually did it a couple times as well. That was really the first time all year that we kind of did it. So I think Sark's like, you know what? Everyone else is doing it. We're going to do it too.
Yeah.
And I agree. Trevor Etienne really didn't have a lot of yards, but he had a lot of impactful yards. Like when they needed 3 to 4 yards, he got the 3 to 4 yards. And that was really the only game all year where Texas didn't do a good enough job of corralling someone when they needed to do that. Also, can we get more pressure? We only had 1 sack in the first game. I need 3 to 4 this game. And I do think the front four has gotten better in general after that game. Like the sack numbers have just exploded. We had 6 versus Arkansas, 6 versus Kentucky. We had like 3 or 4 versus A&M. So the numbers have definitely gotten better since that game. Can you give me 3 or 4 versus this offensive line? And then also Carson Beck, kind of like Quinn Ewers, will hit you with a run here or there. You got to limit that as well. If you can, make him beat you with your arm. And when he throws you a ball, because he will throw you a ball, catch the ball. Yeah, he will throw you at least one. Catch the football. And it'd be nice. We haven't had a pick six in a very long time. Go get me a pick six. That'd be really nice in this game. But go ahead.
Texas has been opportunistic, right? This year, intercepting the ball. So let's turn that into points. I think that's the other thing. It's like, how do you turn it into points? You mentioned a pick six. Can the offense capitalize on the quick change, keep the opponent's defense from getting comfortable? That's going to be a difference in this game if they can do it.
100%. So, Gerald, let's get the predictions. What do you have for the prediction on this game?
My head and my heart are like on different paths right now, but I ultimately think like a field goal is probably the right difference for this game. Because we're here, I'm going to say, I'm going to bet on my boys. I think Texas probably comes out with this one. I will say 31-28.
Okay, 31-28. I'm going to go 26-20. So I take the under here, but I would take Texas to cover. I just think they like that game, that whole first half was the worst offensive first half Sark has ever had. Like, I've never seen them have that bad of a half. I just don't expect them to do that again. Like, if they just have an average half in that game's probably only like 10-0 at halftime. So just don't completely, what, down your leg in this game.
Yeah.
Allow your defense to not play catch up basically the whole game, offense as well. And I think you'll be fine. And like I said, try to establish the run early. Also, try to push the ball downfield early just to soften them up. And then if you want to go east to west, you'll be fine. And I think that's what he's going to do in this game. I don't think we're going to start out with screens because that ain't going to work for this team. They will blow those up like they did in the first game, and it could get ugly. But it would shock me if he went with anywhere near the game plan that he went with the first time. So I think they'll be able to score some points versus this defense because this defense has struggled. They struggled through the air. They've struggled on the ground. We saw that versus Georgia Tech and Haynes King, especially on the ground. I mean, they gave up over 200 yards rushing to UMass. Yeah. So we have to be able to run the ball in this game.
I mean, and that's Texas didn't do it last time, and the offense got predictable. Texas has to do it this time to keep them off the balance. And I've always called back to Sark's conversation about balance. It's not about numbers. It's not about carries. It's not about touches. But when you need to run the ball, can you run the ball? Texas was unable to do that the first game against Georgia. Will they be able to buck that trend in Atlanta?
100%. So we both have Texas winning, both of us in a pretty close game. We'll see if that's enough to get the number 1 seed. At worst, you're the number 2 seed. As a Texas fan, root for Penn State. That's if we win the game. Root for Penn State because I would like the number 1 seed. I think that makes a big difference. I don't want to face, like at this point, I think we probably would end up facing Georgia again. And then the second round, I don't mind facing them a third time, honestly, but I don't want to face them basically back-to-back, especially when they've had – I think the bye actually kind of hurts you a little bit because you're been sitting for 3 weeks. So I don't want to face them once they get, like, honestly, kind of a tune-up game versus what's probably going to be Indiana. Like, they'll beat the out of Indiana. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited to watch it. Texas in the all-white uniforms, just like last year in the Big 12 championship game. So it's going to be a lot of fun down in Atlanta.
Yeah, look good, feel good, play good, right? They got the choice to be the home team and pick the uniforms. Icy White's always the right choice.
It's going to be interesting how many Texas fans show up. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah.
This has been the 31st edition of the SEC Championship, of the Texas Longhorn Show, the SEC Championship week. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out everybody. And remember, every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we will be here breaking it down for you. We'll also be here after the game Saturday. So we'll probably be here 7:30, 8 o'clock is my guess. Hopefully after a Texas win. If not, we're still going to the college football playoffs, so all the goals are still in front of us. But I would love to win the SEC in the first year. I know Gerald would as well, so that's going to be fun. Also, check out my Twitter right there. You can follow me. And then here is Gerald's as well, is also the Longhorn podcast, which he has as well with him and his friend. So please check that out for both of us, guys. It really helps out what we're trying to build here. And again, guys, this has been the 31st edition. And thank you guys for joining us. Hook 'em.